If you're moving to Houston and someone told you you have to live in Katy, here's what I think you need to know before you buy a home. Hi, I'm Carolyn Bauerschlag, a local realtor right here in Katy, helping people just like you relocate from all over to our wonderful area. Let's get to it. First, let's define what Katy is. I would say this falls into 3 different buckets, and the first one is what people call maybe the city of Katy or Old Katy or Katy proper. This is going to be mostly north of I-10, around where City Hall is, where you might find Katy High School, kind of along Highway 90. This is the area that kind of the OGs refer to as the original Katy. That is actually only a very small part of what Katy actually is. So the second bucket might be the zip codes that are assigned to Katy. And those are going to be 77494, 77443, 77449, 77450. And those encompass most of the Katy area. But what's tricky here is that it's not necessarily only in the city of Katy. It's not necessarily Katy ISD. So what I think of when I hear Katy is the third bucket, and that's going to be homes that are zoned to Katy ISD, right? So Katy ISD is a 3-county area. We've got Waller, Harris, and Fort Bend County, and all of those encompass Katy ISD. And that's going to pick up places like Houston, Fulshire, Katy, and Brookshire. So clear as mud, right? We have really great tools to help you identify where Katy ISD actually is, and we'll make sure to include those in the description below. Speaking of, if you're moving to Katy, I can almost guarantee it's because of the schools. No one moves here because they believe in the commute, right? So Katy ISD schools are well known and highly acclaimed. The Texas Education Agency has actually rated Katy ISD as an A grade district for 23 consecutive years, which is incredible. So when you move into Katy ISD, you can all but guarantee that whatever school your child enrolls at, they're going to have an excellent, excellent education. Katy ISD is kind of sometimes called a destination school district. We don't have mountains, we don't have beaches, but we really do have great education. So people really flock here for that specific reason. So what makes Katy ISD so good? Outside of just traditional classroom elements, right? Like math, science, language arts, all of those things you would expect in a classroom, Katy ISD has incredible services. And what I mean by that is if your child needs early intervention for speech delays or a reading comprehension issue, even before their school age, your child can get what they call early childhood intervention services. If you have a child with special needs, Katy ISD is well known for all of the support staff that they have for every child at every level. They're also really well known for their athletics, for their fine arts, for their extracurriculars. Something that came up in the last couple of years is that you as a secondary student, from 8th grade all the way through high school, can pick a specialty track where you can specialize your coursework in STEM or in business or in fine arts, which is just kind of wild when you think about it. Katy ISD also has something called Miller Career Center. So Katy recognizes that not every person wants to go to college, right? Like there are a ton of vocational opportunities, and Katy ISD's Miller Career Center really sets kids up for having credentials, accreditation, or prep for college if they're going to go to college, so that they can make money day one after graduation, right? So we see cosmetology, we see auto mechanics, we see computer sciences, all of these certifications that are available to high school students. Another really unique thing about Katy ISD that other districts don't have is kind of this heart and family feel that really translates into the community funding Katy ISD. And what I mean by that is that Katy ISD has something special called the Katy ISD Education Foundation. And this was started about 13 or 14 years ago. This is a pool of money that's sourced from local people like me, I donate, and from businesses. And what the Katy ISD Education Foundation has done is basically have a grant pool that teachers can apply for every single year to say, hey, I think that this piece of equipment or this programming or this manipulative would be really great for me to have in my 2nd grade unit here at this elementary school. Or I think that my physics classroom would really benefit from this robot and mechanics thing that we want, but they don't have the money for it. Well, the Katy ISD education was established so that teachers didn't have to go to state level agencies to try to find money. This is a local pool of money raised by people who live here that want to reinvest into the classroom. It's pretty awesome. Year to date, the Katy ISD Education Foundation has raised a whopping $4 million and distributed that across hundreds of classrooms throughout the entire district. It's a blind process. It happens every single year where people apply. It's selected by a grant committee, and then those grants get issued out at the end of the year for the following school year. When we tell people things like this, they're stunned, and you can understand why, right? Like, teachers having access to millions of dollars for their own classroom for your kids' benefit really is a special thing. Now, if you're moving to Katy and the surrounding area, another really important thing you need to know about is property taxes. Unless you live in the actual city of Katy, that provides your water, sewer, trash services, you're probably going to be a part of a municipal utility district. And those municipal utility districts are their own taxing authority. And this is different for a lot of people who relocate into our area, where they don't really have like a state property tax, much less a county property tax, much less a municipal utility district tax, right? So it's important for you to remember that if you're coming here from out of state, Texas derives a large portion of its income from property taxes, not income taxes. So when I'm counseling a buyer and we're talking about what they can expect, I ask people to budget somewhere between 2.8 to probably 3% of whatever the home's value is in property taxes that they're going to pay every single year. Now, that 2.8 to 3% is just kind of a midpoint. We see that range anywhere on the low end from like 1.9 for some more mature neighborhoods, all the way up to 3.75 where new construction is. So without getting too far in the boring details here, the way that a municipal utility district works is funds are raised through bonds that the taxpayer then pays off. And those bonds are raised to convert literal fields, like grass, into a living, breathing community, right? So they have to dig for roads, they have to lay utility lines, they have to run gas lines, they have to make sure that sewers are in place, that water is available, and those things cost tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. So when those MUDs are brand new, the debt is the highest, no one's paid it off. And over time, as people move into that area, homeowners use their property taxes to pay off the debt that was raised in order to make a grass field a neighborhood. So a great thing about some of these older neighborhoods is that the tax rates have had the benefit of entire communities paying off that bond for 30 years. So you would see a total blended tax rate of 1.9, maybe midpoint, like I said, 2.8-ish, and all the way up to maybe 3.75 for new construction where no one has moved in yet. Another really important thing to consider is insurance. Homeowners insurance has gotten very expensive in the last couple of years, and we've touched on this before, but it bears repeating. I would say that most people that live in Katy right now, at the time of this video in 2025, their property insurance is probably double what it was maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And what we're dealing in is an environment where insurance carriers are removing themselves from the state of Texas. Now, they may come back. There may be more players that say, hey, we'll issue policies in Texas, but Texas kind of got a bad rap here for a couple years. It kind of kicked off with Hurricane Harvey, and then we've had some of these freak once-in-a-lifetime storms that maybe aren't so once-in-a-lifetime anymore. Just last year, we had the derecho, we had Hurricane Beryl, and it caused, quote-unquote, billions of dollars of damage. We had ice storms. We never used to have ice storms here in Texas, and I think basically insurers are saying, hey, we're done. White flag, we're throwing it up. And the way that they're doing that is they're either exiting Texas altogether, or they're saying, hey, we're going to shift the burden of carrying this insurance kind of back onto you. So instead of you being able to have a 1% wind and hail deductible, you now can probably only get your hands on a 3% wind and hail deductible. And instead of that policy costing you $2,500, $2,000, that policy is probably now $3,500 or $4,000. And this is really hard on homeowners, right? Because it's a recurring fee that you really can't get out of, and you probably don't actually want to get out of it. But what we've gone from basically is paying $2,500 for the possibility that something happens to your home, and you only being out of pocket, let's say, $4,000, right? Like if your home's valued at $400,000 and you have a 1% wind and hail deductible and something happens, you're out $4,000 and your insurer takes care of the rest of it. Well, here we are 5 years later and they say, you know what? I think your house is actually worth $500,000. And oh, by the way, you have a 3% wind and hail deductible. So if something happens to your home, before the insurance agencies will give you a dime, you are out $15,000. So this is something very significant for you to consider. What they're functionally trying to do is saying, hey, we don't want to pay for a roof. we're not paying for roofs anymore is basically the punchline. So whenever I'm a real estate agent working with a buyer who is relocating to the area, yours truly is making sure that that roof is in excellent condition. I joke with people that I like to be like your dad on a real estate purchase. So we're going to make sure that that roof is in great shape. I'll teach you the differences between an architectural shingle, between a 3-tab shingle, and we'll really interrogate that so that you aren't inheriting some major expense right after you just laid out your down payment and your closing costs. Something to be mindful of is that flood insurance is not included in this insurance discussion. That's its own separate bear, which brings me to my next point. Let's chat about floodplains for a second. Floodplains are kind of like the invisible boogeyman of Katy, Texas. And I want y'all to be really careful with this. And this is a major part of any buyer consultation that we do when a buyer says that they want to buy in our area. So Harris County, Fort Bend County, all of these counties have floodplain maps, and we teach our buyers how to use them and how to determine if their home is in a floodplain. These floodplain maps are elevation-based, but the tricky thing here is that these are put forth by FEMA, and FEMA doesn't redraw maps every single year, right? And they can't, right? And so what we try to help consumers do is evaluate risk based on what we know from the FEMA maps and what their risk tolerance is. So let's break that down for just a second. You have 3 different tiers of risk when we're looking at homes that are in the floodplain or not. The first is what we call Zone X, or functionally zero risk in the eyes of an insurer. Basically, based on elevation, no one is expecting this home to take on water. And I would say the majority of my buyers that are in Zone X say, you know what, I don't think I want a flood insurance claim. And then flood insurance policy. But then there's people like me who are native Houstonians who say, yeah, but I don't trust that. So I'm going to carry a flood insurance policy on my home pretty much regardless. And when those flood policies are optional, they tend to be maybe $800, $900 a year versus a few $1,000s a year when they're mandatory. Now you can buy a policy through FEMA, or you can buy a policy through a private insurer. That option is available to you. Now the second tier of risk is what we call the 500-year floodplain. The 500-year floodplain does not mean this home is going to flood once every 500 years. It's kind of a goofy way to talk about it, but what they're talking about is the percentage risk each year that a home would take on water. So what it means is that in the eyes of FEMA and insurers, there is a 0.2% chance every single year that this home is going to take on water. So insurers say, you know what, that risk is still pretty low and I accept it. Therefore, we do not qualify or require a buyer to have a flood insurance policy. So still that flood insurance policy for the same $800, $900 at the time of this video is going to cost you that for a year and is optional. You don't have to do it. Now, our third tier of risk is going to be the 100-year floodplain. That 100-year floodplain, again, does not mean it's going to flood once every 100 years. It means that there is a 1% chance every single year that this home is going to take on water. And what insurers say is, hey, we don't like that. We don't like those odds. So we're going to require you to carry flood insurance. When flood insurance is required to be carried, it is not hundreds of dollars, it is thousands. And that is based on the specific elevation of the house, how big the home is, basically how much risk and what are we going to have to replace, not necessarily if, but kind of when this home takes on water. So we go through this for every single buyer that's moving into our area to make sure that you are well aware of where your home is positioned relative to the floodplain. Now, the good news is that in Katy, we don't have a whole terrible ton of that, but there are areas that light up kind of along that bayou system where a home is likely to be in a floodplain. So I'll help you make sure to find them. Another thing to be aware of if you're moving to Katy is that you're probably going to be in an HOA. Now, people coming in from out of state will tell me all the time, I don't want to live in an HOA. And that's probably because they've gotten a bad rap. But the long and short of it is that if you're moving into the Katy, Fulshire, Cypress area, anywhere along West Houston, you are probably going to be in an HOA. Now, HOAs aren't all bad. A lot of people are surprised to find in Houston that Houston isn't zoned. There aren't laws that are put forth by the city that say what can go next to who. So you have residential next to commercial, next to multifamily, next to retail. It can be kind of a visual clutter mess. Instead, these HOAs will come in and they'll say, hey, we're going to impose the laws that maybe the other cities do, right? So they're going to make sure that you have kind of regular use and enjoyment. So like all residential will be together and retail will be along major roads, or apartment complexes are going to be closer to bigger freeways, right? Like they kind of dictate where things are going to go. HOAs in Katy are not necessarily bad or hyper aggressive, and the fees aren't really terrible either. I would say most HOAs in our area are going to charge somewhere between $750 a year up to about $1,600 a year. If you're buying in a place that's gated, or if you're in a 55 and up community, those can be closer to maybe $3,300 a year, maybe $4,000, because you're getting the use and enjoyment of amenities that are just specific to you. But if you come to this area and you say, I want to live in Katy and I don't want to live in a HOA, that is probably going to be either very hard to find or very expensive, because non-HOA properties are typically on several acres, and those acres have gone up in value. Another thing you need to know about moving to the Katy area is that traffic is just part of life. We kind of joke that Katy is 30 minutes away from Katy, and that's probably going to continue to be that way. We've got a lot of school zones, and those school zones are in effect twice a day, every day, and you would hope for that, right? But if you're trying to traverse from one place to another, it's important to know that it's going to probably take you somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes to get to a major highway like the Grand Parkway or West Park Toll or I-10, and to budget that accordingly. We see a lot of our people that work in downtown or West Chase or at 610 in the Galleria area utilize things like the park and ride. There's a park and ride at 99 and I-10, but a lot of people just kind of plan for sitting in traffic. A lot of employers will offer flexible work hours where you can maybe start at 7 a.m. and leave at 3 to kind of miss some of those peak commuting hours. But that is one disadvantage, I would say, of living out here in Katy. And this is kind of a joke, but not really. One major thing that I think that you have to know about Katy when you're moving to our area is where your closest HEB is. If you know me, you know I love HEB, and it's not just because it's my emotional support grocery store, though I do go there 2 times a week just to feel good. Maybe I'll go there a 3rd time. But the reality is that HEB is our predominant retailer or grocer here in the Katy area, Houston area. Everyone loves HEB, and HEB is a smart company. They do not put locations in places where they think they're going to be unsuccessful, right? So if an area is high growth and you're thinking, gosh, I would really move there, but I don't know about the grocery store situation, the foods are kind of far away, and you hear that an HEB is going to go in, I guarantee you the values are going to skyrocket. So wherever an HEB is going, if you can kind of get in front of that, you will probably enjoy your property values going up. I say I was joking, but I am kind of serious. Like, over in East Downtown, there were no HEBs forever, and then one opened up at 28 in McGregor right next to the medical center, and all of a sudden, everyone's values in East Downtown went up. We saw this happen out here in Katy when one finally opened up on 1463, and that was to service like the whole west side of Katy and Fulshire, and we saw it again when one opened up over on Morton Road, north of I-10, kind of over by the football stadiums. Everyone's values went up. So make sure to look out for your local HEB. That's all I have for you today. If you're thinking about moving to Katy or the West Houston area, I would love to be your realtor. Check out the description below for the best way to get in contact with us. We would love to talk to you. I'm a real person. I'm here to pick up the phone and answer when you call. And if you found value in this video today, make sure to click to subscribe. We put excellent content like this out every single week. See you soon.